If you like to talk about combat sports and you want to join the discussion, click the subscribe button below and the bell notification icon next to it and join Knucklehead Nation. What's going on, Knuckleheads? Welcome to the Fighters Rep video podcast. I am your host, the Fighters Rep. You can also refer to this as the Keep It Clean podcast. We're actually trying to transition into that name a bit more. Listen, today, Knuckleheads, what we want to talk about is Conor McGregor's next fight. I think this is a very important topic because, he's the most powerful guy in combat sports at this time, Conor McGregor. And today on the Ariel Helwani show, or I believe it was yesterday, something like that, on ESPN MMA, Ariel Helwani was talking about it. And of all the choices in the lightweight division, in the incredibly stacked lightweight division, Ariel Helwani was saying that Conor McGregor should take on Nate Diaz in his next fight. Conor McGregor, according to Ariel Helwani, should take on Nate Diaz in his next fight. And for me, it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to take on Nate Diaz. And I'm going to tell you guys why that I don't think it makes a lot of sense for him to take on Nate Diaz at this juncture. And I'm going to give you some interesting ideas if you're like me and you like to see, the right thing happen in the fight game as opposed to just the money thing, and also we'll discuss other alternatives as well. So as far as Nate Diaz goes, unless you guys have been living under a rock, I mean, him and Nate Diaz went 1-1, and that was back in 2016, right? So we're already 4 years removed from the two Nate Diaz fights where McGregor lost the first one and won the second one. And now the notorious one, has been predicted, I guess, or slated, or, whatever you want to call it, by Ariel Helwani to take on Nate Diaz for a trilogy bout. But, things have changed since then. McGregor, since 2018, I mean, even if you look beyond that and before that, since 2017, in the last 3 years, McGregor's only had 2 fights. The loss to Khabib Nurmagomedov in 2018 and the quick defeat of Donald Cowboy Cerrone, which was at the beginning of this year. It's hard to believe that happened at the beginning of this year. By the way, big shout out to Mihailo Mikhail. What's up, brother? I appreciate you being in the chat, man. It's always great to have you in the chat. I really appreciate you being in here, my brother. So let's get to it. I wanted, before I get into this, to show you guys the UFC's current lightweight rankings, which, I think they'll be updated now that Drew Dober beat Hernandez. But let's take a look at them. There they are. Bam! We've got, Khabib Nurmagomedov, of course, is the champion. So he's not on this list. He would be the champion at the top of this list, like right here. Then we've got Justin Gaethje, Ferguson, Poirier, McGregor at 4. And again, despite not fighting for the past couple of years, many times. I mean, again, since 2017, past 3 years, he's only fought twice. McGregor's still ranked number 4 in the lightweight division, followed by Dan Hooker, and then Paul Felder, Charles Oliveira, Ali Quinta, Kevin Lee, Diego Ferreira, Edson Barboza, Donald Cerrone, Islam Makhachev, Gregor Gillespie, and Alexander Hernandez, who I think is going to be out of that top 15 now that Drew Dober beat him. And I think we are going to see the cameo of Drew Dober into that top 15. I mean, he's got to at least take over that 15 spot. But that being said, let's go through this list. I mean, there are a couple intriguing matchups here, and I can understand from a financial standpoint why people would think, or why Ariel Helwani would think that Nate Diaz, the trilogy, makes sense. But look at this list. What's missing from this list? You guessed it, Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is not even ranked in the top 15 in this division. And so why would Conor McGregor, a guy listed at number 4, why would he take on a Nate Diaz that's not even on here? Right? Not even listed. Not even considered here. And it begs the question, is it gonna look right for the UFC to put Nate Diaz in there against Conor McGregor when he's not even ranked and Conor McGregor is ranked number 4? I understand the history. I understand, the trilogy fight. But Nate Diaz is a guy coming off of a pretty lopsided loss to Jorge Masvidal. And he's not even here. I mean, if he was somewhere on this list, the UFC, I think, would have a better excuse to kind of, put the fight together and say, well, he's ranked number 14 or 13 or 10 or whatever it would be in the hypothetical world where he's a top 15 guy. And, they've got 2 fights. They've split them 1-on-1, 1-1. Let's make the trilogy fight happen. But that's not the case here, right? That's not the case here. And there are a ton of guys ahead of Nate Diaz on this list that deserve the fight against McGregor and to potentially get in line to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov after fighting Conor McGregor. But definitely there are guys on this list that deserve Conor McGregor, I think, more than Nate Diaz, and could probably make just as much financial sense. They could probably make just as much financial sense. And basically my thing is I just don't think, and you guys might disagree with me, I don't think Conor McGregor, with all the power and leverage he has, is the most successful combat sports athlete on the planet right now. I mean, basically. I don't think with all the power and leverage he has, he's going to say, hell yeah, I'm going to get in there with a guy not even ranked in the top 15. No. Conor McGregor is currently posturing himself, trying to get a title shot against Khabib Nurmagomedov. And the only way he's going to get that is to beat a guy, I think, ahead of him, or somebody that's deserving of a contender fight. And I don't think that's Nate Diaz. Before I continue, hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon next to it. Join Knucklehead Nation. Anything you guys donate to the chat, any shirts you buy, in the links below, get reinvested right back into the channel and the promotion, helping me build. So thank you so much. Fight Life Nation says Nate Diaz is fire, but I think I would want to see Nate coming off a win versus Conor coming off a win. I want to see Conor versus Masvidal. Conor is coming off a win. Nate isn't. That's why I'm thinking this fight's it's a hard sell. It doesn't look legitimate if it happens. That fight would be epic right now. Masvidal is the biggest name opponent who's not a champion right now. Conor will not fight a legitimate lightweight unless it's for a belt. That's what I'm saying. That's kind of where I'm going with this. Mihailo Mikhail says Conor's 1-1 at lightweight. His commercial value of providing him the opportunities more than his record and skills. That's true to an extent, Mihailo. But let's not forget, he finished Cerrone. And before Gaethje, beforehand, Gaethje had finished Cerrone, and they were talking about, well, the guy deserves a shot. You know what I mean? He finished a Cerrone that may have lost some of his luster for sure, but he finished him in more emphatic fashion than anyone on this list, including Gaethje and Ferguson. So you got to give Conor the credit for the skills he does have, because the man has mad skills, especially in the stand-up. The man has mad skills. I mean, we could say what we want about the guy, but he's got skills. By the way, hit the like button if you haven't already. I'd appreciate you guys hitting the like button, comment, share, do everything else the good people on YouTube do here. Fight Life Nation says, Conor's a legit contender, but I don't think he should be ranked at lightweight when he's only fought at lightweight twice in 4 years and is 1-1. That's a good point, but he beat Dustin Poirier, let's not forget. And he also beat Donald Cerrone. So he's got a couple wins against a couple guys that are ranked here. So, I mean, it would be hard not to rank him, right? It would be very hard. I mean, I don't think you could not rank him, considering the way he dealt with Dustin Poirier when they fought, albeit a while back, and the way he dealt with Cowboy Cerrone just recently, who's still ranked number 12. Let's see here. The trilogy fight. This is Mihailo. The trilogy fight has always been in the shelf, or on the shelf. Conor won't fight for the title. Khabib's management told him he has to fight more. Conor's most commercial fight would be against Diaz at 55. Perhaps. George, by that logic, Conor shouldn't be fighting a top contender right now. He hasn't won a lightweight bout since 2016. Diaz is now a welterweight. Yeah, well, but that's not true. That's not true, right? Because if you look at the list, Gaethje should be the next one that gets his shot at Nurmagomedov. So let's take Gaethje and Khabib out of the equation. Tony Ferguson is not going to be ready. He's gonna need to heal up with all the damage he took against Gaethje. Dustin Poirier recently lost to Khabib, and McGregor finished him in one round. So is that a fight that the UFC wants to make again? They're certainly not going to put McGregor... Look, they're not going to keep McGregor on the shelf. He's too much of a money man. So are they going to put McGregor in there against Tony Ferguson? No, because Ferguson's going to need time to heal, and it's going to take a long time. And McGregor needs to fight sometime this year. And I don't think you'll see Ferguson again this year. Gaethje is in line to fight Khabib. I doubt they give Conor the Gaethje fight, although it's possible. But I doubt it. I think Gaethje fights Khabib. Poirier there's an argument that could be made for Poirier. But he beat him so bad. And Poirier just kind of lost to Khabib. So for him to lose to Khabib and then Gaethje get a crack at Khabib and Poirier to get another shot at Khabib right away, I think that's just wrong. I think that's just wrong, and they wouldn't do that. I think they would give somebody else a shot at Khabib before allowing Poirier to get that shot, and before giving Poirier that contender shot. A couple options, or I think the best option on this list, if I'm being honest with you guys, there's two of them. There's two good options on this list, right? Both very interesting options. Neil the Security is in here. Big shout out to Neil the Security. What's up, my brother? I appreciate you being in here. Let me see what you guys are saying real quick. It says, what's up, brother? What's up to you? Mihailo says, unfortunately, the rules don't apply to Conor because of his commercial value. Conor won't fight an opponent like Tony or Dustin now. He can't afford another loss. Conor rejected Gaethje and chose Cowboy. But look, Mihailo, Conor wants Gaethje now. But he's not going to get Gaethje. And like I said, Conor can't fight Tony. Tony is going to need time to recover from what happened to him in that Gaethje fight. Conor probably shouldn't fight Poirier because of the way he dealt with him, and because of Poirier's recent loss to Khabib. Let's see here. I don't know. Tell me if you guys disagree with me on those points. Fight Life Nation says his last one was against the guy ranked at number 12, and he didn't cut the weight to get to welterweight. That's true, but it doesn't mean he can't do it. Steve Rodriguez in the chat. What up, my brother? Appreciate you being in here. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon next to it. We do this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m., but I just felt like I wanted to get on and talk about Conor's next fight because it is something that's sort of popping right now in the fight game, and somebody needed to address it. Fight Life Nation says, come on, George. He beat Poirier at featherweight, Should they rank him still in the featherweight division? Well, they were both featherweights that came up, Marco. And he beat the guy in one round. He crushed the guy in one round. And the guy in Poirier just recently lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov. So are they going to give him a contender fight again right away? I think what makes more sense, if I'm being honest with you guys, right? And tell me what you guys think about this. Dan Hangman Hooker. That's a guy who has not had his shot at the title yet. He comes in with a lot of marketability because of where he's from and his association with Israel Adesanya. And he's a guy who's earned it. He beat Paul Felder in a war. He beat Al Iaquinta, who gave Khabib, everything he could handle. He's got great striking. And I think, the New Zealand versus Ireland angle, and again, the association with Israel Adesanya, it's got more value at this point than another Dustin Poirier fight. It's got more value than a Dustin Poirier fight. That's one choice. Mihailo Mikhail says Conor's best chance for Khabib rematch is Gaethje. Gaethje will fight for the title for the first time in his career. Conor does not have influence now to what's going to happen in the division. Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying Gaethje's got to fight Khabib next. That's got to happen, and I think that's going to happen later on in this year. But Ferguson is probably not going to fight for the rest of the year. Poirier probably doesn't deserve a contender fight right away, right? Poirier has recently fought Khabib, more recently than, any of these guys, pretty much. And I don't think they're going to give Poirier the shot, man. They did the entire Abu Dhabi event around Poirier and Khabib, and that didn't happen that long ago for them to give Poirier another number one contender shot. I think you look at a guy like Dan Hooker. You look at a guy like Dan Hooker and you say, damn, there is some potential. Listen, he's a stand-up guy. He's a striker. He's tough as shit. He can fight. He's got marketability. That's a fight you can make. In my opinion, that's a great number one contender fight at this point. It really is. It really is, man. Let me see here. I just think if rankings matter, shouldn't you honor them? Or are they just a media creation? Well, I mean, I do think the rankings do matter, and they're not a media creation. These are the UFC's rankings, right? So they do matter. But with everything that I've, kind of laid out for you guys, Gaethje, let's say Gaethje gets the Khabib fight next. Ferguson's on the shelf. Poirier's already had his shot. I mean, what makes the most sense to you guys? Am I crazy here? Tell me what you guys think about it. Because I don't feel like I'm crazy. I feel like a Dan Hooker fight makes a ton of sense right now. Let me see here. Dustin has been in the battlefield while Conor was behind glass book that match, says Neil Security. That's true. That's true. But he recently got a shot at Khabib. Do you think that they're going to make that fight, Poirier versus McGregor again, A, after Poirier had a recent shot at Khabib, more recent than McGregor, and B, after McGregor sparked Poirier out in one round? That's what you got to look at. That's what you got to look at. Mihailo says, I read that Hooker might fight Dustin. Can't remember the article or reference. That's a good fight too. Fight Life Nation says Poirier versus Oliveira would be a great fight for both guys. Hooker versus Conor would be ugly. Hooker is too slow. Maybe. But if Hooker, who's very educated on the feet, can hang in there to the later rounds, the way that Nate Diaz did, who's also slow, then, man, we're talking about a hell of a fight. We're talking about a hell of a fight. And you also got to think about it from the promotional aspect. I mean, the UFC is probably looking at that fight and saying that's a safe fight for Conor McGregor. It's a stand-up guy. It's better, it's better than, it's the highest guy that's available. And you sure as hell, here's the thing, you don't want to put Charles Oliveira in there against McGregor, and you can't put Felder in there. You can't put Felder in there because he lost to Dan Hooker. So you can't put Felder in there, and you don't want to put Charles Oliveira in there because, you know, he just worked Kevin Lee over, and he probably deserves it. I think Charles Oliveira definitely deserves it big time. Oliveira deserves it bad on this list, right? But they're not going to put no Oliveira in there against McGregor. He's too dangerous. He's too dangerous. So listen to what I'm trying to tell you guys. Besides Dan Hooker, there's one other choice on this list that I think would be very exciting, but would be a very dangerous fight for Conor McGregor. Big shout out to Mihailo Mikhail for another donation, man. I really appreciate you, brother. Your generosity is greatly appreciated on this channel, man. I really appreciate it. Life on Mars in here. Appreciate you being in here, brother. Listen, guys. There's one guy on this list that I think would make a lot of sense and would add an incredibly interesting element and backstory to a potential future Khabib fight. And guess who I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about this guy right here. I do think that the fight at this point that would make the most sense is Dan Hooker. And there is some sense in making a Poirier fight. There's some. Because of what McGregor did to him in the past, you know? But look at this guy right here. Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev is, or Makhachev, whatever you want to call it, that is such a marketable fight to make because his association with Khabib Nurmagomedov. We've got a call. Let me hear who's giving us a call here. What's going on, Knucklehead? You're on the line. Who's this?
Gregory.
Gregory, what's going on, Greg? Is this Justin Jr.?
Yeah, you already know.
Justin Jr., you can't fool me, young man. I can tell your voice from a mile away. What's going on, Justin?
Nothing much. Just tuned in, calling in. I saw you pointed to Islam. That would make a interesting matchup. But
very interesting matchup.
At this point, you know, Conor McGregor, he's not going to main event fight nights. I mean, that's out of the equation. And Islam, even though he does have a pretty big following, you know, it's kind of like, you know, Islam is really good friends with Khabib, so maybe it would make Khabib really angry if Islam loses, and you know it should be a way more winnable fight for Conor than Khabib. It'd be an easy path to get to Khabib, get in his head a lot too.
It would be
friends with Khabib, but here's the thing: Islam's name value is not there, and even though he has over like 1 million followers on Instagram, I think he's just not appealing to the casuals. Nobody, as a casual fan, nobody knows who this guy is. Of course, I know who he is because I'm hardcore, but the casuals, nobody knows who he is. So,
but you're referring. You guys are referring, and Marco agrees with you. With all due respect, he says Islam doesn't have the name value. But what you guys are forgetting is Islam and Khabib have huge name value in Russia and overseas and a lot of the Middle Eastern and the Central Asian countries.
Does Islam have enough name value to main event a pay-per-view? No, he
with
does
Conor
not.
with Conor McGregor, my grandmother, God rest her soul, would have enough name value to headline a pay-per-view.
You know, the opponent needs to be a little weight. Like a couple people are saying Charles Oliveira would make an interesting fight, and
they're not going to make that fight. They're not going to make that fight.
That would be a really interesting fight, but the UFC knows that's a very losable fight for Conor, and also the name value's not there. So Dan Hooker. I mean, Dan Hooker, maybe.
That's the best one. That's the best one.
Hey, also Dustin Poirier. I think Dustin Poirier is ready to go. Tony's hurt. Gaethje's gonna fight for the belt against Khabib.
Right.
You look, Dan Hooker there. Paul Felder's coming off a loss
to Dan Hooker.
Yeah, the momentum's on Dan Hooker right now, and that'd be a good fight for Conor.
I think so too, and that's why I took issue with Ariel Helwani saying Nate Diaz. I mean, I could see that happening too, just because it's marketable. But Dan Hooker is a guy who's, pretty marketable himself. Probably not at the Nate Diaz level, but marketable himself. Brings that New Zealand, contingent and that association with Israel Adesanya with him. And he's a guy who deserves it. He's ranked number 5, right underneath Conor McGregor. So in my opinion, that's probably the best, most legitimate fight that they could make based on their rankings. And I think an interesting fight would be the Islam Makhachev fight, but I don't think they'll make it. What do you think? Yeah. What do you think is the next fight for McGregor?
It'd either be Poirier or Hooker, and even though Poirier, like the Hooker's fight more likely to be made because Hooker's on a winning streak. And it's just the performance Hooker put on against Felder. It was a really good performance, but I just don't see him beating McGregor, Poirier, Ferguson, Gaethje, or Khabib. So it's a winnable fight. It's a really winnable fight. He'll probably be a decent favorite, and Hooker's going to bring the Zealands over there, and it will be marketable.
I think so too, man. I like the way you think, Justin Jr.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Anything you want to leave us out with, Justin?
Yeah, YouTube channel Justin Jr. 962 interviewing MMA fighters, former UFC champions. I've had a couple on. Mark Coleman, tournament UFC champion Royce Gracie, all legit. And also UFC News. I'm out. Justin Jr. 962.
Shout out Justin Jr. 962. Appreciate you calling in, brother.
Yep, take it easy.
That's Justin Jr., friend of the show. If you guys don't know, you can call at the number below. And if you're international, you can't dial this number. Hit us up on Skype at Fighters Rep. You should be able to find us there. It looks like I'm making a little bit of sense. Justin Jr. really, he knows his stuff as far as MMA goes, I like to think. And he sees what I'm seeing. I feel like this Dan Hooker fight is probably the best fight for the UFC to make. It's the most winnable fight for McGregor that at the same time carries some legitimacy because Hooker is a top 5 guy. And it's an interesting fight. It's an interesting fight. It's sellable. I do think McGregor probably wins the fight. But if Hooker can keep this thing going into the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, he's a dog, man. He's got a dog in him. The only other fight on here that makes sense besides Poirier, I think the only other really interesting fight is Islam Makhachev. Now, when I say makes sense, I kind of mean it's something that would happen. If it were up to me, I think a guy like Charles Oliveira deserves a big fight. He can deserve it as much as anybody. I think Hooker deserves it as well. Me personally, I wouldn't give it to Poirier. I felt like Conor dealt with Poirier easy. I know it's been a while, but still, and I feel like Poirier just recently got a shot. I would probably give it to Hooker. If I'm the promoter, I'd probably give it to Hooker. That's the way I'm feeling about it. I don't know. Tell me what you guys think. Fight Life Nation says the pay-per-views are mostly sold in the U.S. Jamaica says Conor trying to weasel his way to another shot. He should fight Hooker or Poirier. Mihailo says Jamaican won't happen. Ali Abdelaziz is the manager of both Khabib and Gaethje, and they already explicitly said Conor needs to fight more. Ali Abdelaziz ain't shit. If the UFC says you're going to fight this guy and we're going to pay you this much, Ali Abdelaziz is going to collect his money. All right, he's not that seriously worried about this shit. He's trying to make money, and he's gonna go where the money is. He can say whatever he wants, but I bet you when they flash that money in his face, he's gonna be like, "Oh, that's the fight I want." At least that's the way I feel about it. Fight Life Nation says I'm gonna throw a name out there that would be really big and is a winnable fight. Max Holloway. It would be a rematch, and although Max got roughed up by Poirier, but you know. That would mean Max going up a weight division, you know, and Max lost to Volkanovski, and him coming off a loss to fight McGregor, I don't see it happening, my man. I don't see it happening, and the only other time he went up, he lost to Poirier as well. I don't see it happening. I mean, it would be an interesting fight, but I don't see it happening. Jamaican says, knowing Conor, he probably rematches Cowboy for a title shot. No way he fights Hooker with a longer reach. Wow, Jamaican, so you don't think Conor would fight Hooker? I think Conor would love that fight, man. I think that's right up Conor's alley to fight Dan Hooker, right? Because he's a striker. He's not as explosive. He's not going to take him down. It's going to be a stand-up fight. It's going to be very safe for Conor McGregor, you know, and he is slower. He is definitely slower than Conor McGregor. That'd be a good fight. That'd be an entertaining fight. And I think Conor McGregor would love to take that fight. Fight Life Nation says Max has been on fire since Conor left the featherweight division, only losing there once, and he was a long-time champ. I don't think it happens, man. I don't see them making the Hooker fight, mainly because he has no beef with him. Felder or Hooker is the fight, according to Jamaican. We'll see. We'll see. I wanted to make this video for you guys because I don't know. I mean, I can see the Nate Diaz thing being marketable. I can see it being marketable. But with all these guys on this list that are actually ranked, does the UFC make a Nate Diaz fight? And does Conor McGregor position himself for a title shot from beating a Nate Diaz, you know? And then how dangerous is that fight for Conor McGregor? I mean, he could lose to Nate Diaz, which he probably wouldn't at this point, I don't think. But he could lose that fight, and he'd be losing to a guy that's not even ranked. I mean, that would really hurt Conor McGregor. And I don't think the UFC wants to see Conor McGregor's career hurt like that. I don't think Conor McGregor wants to see his career hurt like that. I don't think he would take the Diaz fight when there are all these guys that are easier fights, probably, in some cases, and much more highly ranked and could position him for a title fight when there are all these guys available. And look, it's the perfect storm. If Gaethje loses to Khabib, Ferguson's still on the shelf, Conor, fights Poirier or Dan Hooker and wins, then that's the guy you got to give the title shot to. You got to give it to Conor. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. Conor just, he knows how to work the system, man. The universe just works for Conor, man. He talks a lot about, imagining shit into existence, and man, I think he gets a title shot pretty soon. If, he gets either Poirier or Hooker, because I think he can handle either one of those guys. And then he's right back in the mix. I mean, look at him. He's number 4. He's in the mix right now. He's in the mix right now. If Gaethje wasn't there, Conor McGregor would have to get that next shot. It's amazing. It is amazing. Mahilo says, it's most probably going to be Hooker or Diaz. He prefers a stand-up fighter. Dustin, Hooker, or Diaz. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be Dustin or Hooker. I mean, I don't know. Unless he's just in it for the money. But look, he's got so much money. He's going to make so much money anyway. I just feel like it's going to be either Poirier or Hooker, man. I feel like it's going to be either Poirier or Hooker. Unless Khabib says, fight Gaethje. And, maybe the UFC forces the Gaethje versus Conor fight, but I don't think so. I think Gaethje has definitely earned his shot at Khabib. Gaethje's earned his shot at Khabib. And I think Conor's going to have to take on Poirier or Hooker. That's the way I see this thing playing out. I don't know. And I didn't even really think about this in detail. I didn't think about this in detail until Ariel Helwani brought it up today. I mean, really, I didn't think about it in detail at all until Ariel Helwani brought it up today and said Nate Diaz. But I said to myself, Nate Diaz? Man, where's Nate Diaz at right now? I mean, he just came off of a loss. Yeah, he brings some money. Yeah, they've got some bad blood. But, Conor's even moving and acting differently. I mean, he's apologizing and wishing Khabib the best, and he's a different guy. At this point in his career, he's trying to position himself for a title fight, not for a BMF fight with Nate Diaz or a runner-up BMF fight. Fight Life Nation says, I think the UFC would rather put him in against someone like Robbie Lawler, someone who's a name but won't move around much or wrestle. I don't think Hooker or Poirier can beat Conor McGregor. I don't think they can. I mean, we'd have to wait and see. I think they'd be good fights, but I think they'd be good fights that Conor McGregor wins. And they make the most sense when you consider the UFC's rankings. They make the most sense. There's also the following, says Mihailo. If Khabib can't fight in September, has personal issues going on with a sick father, Gaethje will fight Conor. That's the only exception confirmed by Gaethje. There you go. There you go. And that's something that could really happen. And if Khabib's out long enough, then yeah, Conor fights for that interim title that Gaethje's got. That makes a ton of sense too. And I'm glad you bring that up, Mihailo, because that makes a ton of sense. Fight Life Nation says, we will see pretty soon. I think like Ryan Garcia, he's just going to keep talking smack on Twitter and not fight anybody. Well, I do think he wants to fight. I do think he understands that he's got to get another big win under his belt before he can once again challenge Khabib for the title. I do think that that's his ultimate goal. He wants to challenge Khabib for the title. And I do think that if they tell him, Conor, you got to fight Dustin or you got to fight Dan Hooker, I do think he's going to say, let's do it. Let's do it. Conor won't wait until September. He's looking for a fight in July, International Fight Week. Perfect. I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think that's why if they offer him Poirier or Hooker at this time, he will say yes and he will be ready to bang in July. And either one of those fights is exciting, right? Because even though I think McGregor beats these guys, I do think they have a shot to beat him as well. Poirier is a good fighter. Hooker is a good fighter. I do think if Hooker gets the fight, Poirier is going to be really pissed off. I do think Poirier wants that rematch. But both are exciting fights, man. These are going to be stand-up fights if they happen. A guy like Charles Oliveira is too dangerous. You don't want Charles. You don't even want a Kevin Lee, because a Kevin Lee is going to try to wrestle Conor McGregor down. I think Ally Aquinta, Paul Felder, Poirier, Hooker, these are all very, very winnable fights for Conor McGregor. Very winnable fights. Austin Allen in this bitch says, I'd love to see Conor fight Hooker. Me too, Austin. Me too, bro. I would love to see that fight. Mihailo says, also from a fight perspective, Conor needs rounds. His cardio has been his weakness. He needs a legit fight to lead into a Habib rematch. Habib and Gaethje are cardio monsters. That's true. That's true, and I do think he'll get a little push from Hooker and Poirier, both guys who can beat him. But again, I do think Conor would be the favorite in both of those fights. Conor versus Poirier is the fight to make. I think he will win, but he should fight a true contender. Jamaican, you've got a point there, but do they give Poirier that fight considering what Conor did to Poirier the first time they fought? Do they give Poirier that fight, brother? And Poirier came off a title shot, pretty recently. So, the guy who wins that fight is probably going to get a title shot. The UFC knows that. So, are they going to give Poirier another chance to get to that position? I don't know, man. That's why I like Hooker. Austin Allen says it's a great fight, but the reason I'd rather Hooker is just that Conor already fought Poirier. Not that running it back wouldn't be awesome too. Either way, it's awesome. But I agree. I agree with Austin Allen. That a Hooker fight is more interesting. We haven't seen it. He's a stand-up fighter. He's tough as fucking hell. He's going to bring the fight to Conor. He's not going to back down. Maybe he gets knocked out quick, but if he lasts, if he can make it to the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, then man, let me tell you, Hooker takes him into deep water. We've got a hell of a fight on our hands. It doesn't matter, says Jamaican. Poirier is ranked 3. We see losers win in rematches all the time. I agree with you, but I just think from a promotional standpoint, again, you got to think the way the UFC is thinking. They're trying to get the money, appease their fans, and make it look legitimate. A Hooker fight probably makes more sense than a Poirier fight, although the fact that Conor did beat Poirier already does add some sort of intrigue since, Poirier is going to want to get that back. He's going to want to run that back. So I think it's Poirier or Hooker, man. I don't think it's a good idea to run that Diaz fight. I think the UFC would be shooting itself in the foot to run that Nate Diaz fight. That's very high risk, very low reward for Conor McGregor. And I think the UFC is too smart to do something like that. I think they're too smart to do something like that. I think we get Poirier or Hooker. Let's see, Austin Allen says, it has been a long time and should be a different fight, to be fair. That's true. Absolutely. Absolutely, it should be a different fight. They're coming up a weight class. They've both had a couple years to think about what happened and to improve. Poirier and Conor fought. Man, it's already been almost 6 years since that fight. I can't believe it. I can't believe it's already been almost 6 years since Conor McGregor fought Dustin Poirier at UFC 178. It was September 27th, 2014 in Las Vegas at UFC 178. So, you guys have my thoughts. You guys have my thoughts. Let's see here. Wait a minute. Mihailo Mikhail says, Dustin is 9-2 since his loss to Conor. Conor lost 2 fights since the Dustin fight. It's going to be an interesting match. Dustin improved a lot in 6 years. High risk fight. I agree. And a fight that makes a lot of sense. Austin Allen. Why not Masvidal? Why not Masvidal? That's another good choice. That's another really good choice, And that's a really big money fight. But I think Masvidal's a big guy, man. I think Masvidal's a big guy, a dangerous fight, and might be something that Conor might not be that interested in. Perhaps Conor's more interested, again, in repositioning himself to fight Habib Nurmagomedov, and I think the best way to do that is to fight Poirier and Hooker, but I would love to watch a Masvidal fight. Fight Life Nation says, Austin, that's the mega fight. That is the biggest fight outside of Habib fight. that can be made. Fight Life Nation, you're right about that, brother. Jamaica says Masvidal is a welterweight. Conor beating Masvidal at welterweight doesn't guarantee him a lightweight title shot. And that's kind of along the lines I'm thinking, Jamaican. Austin Allen says true Jamaican. That's a great point. Conor doesn't beat Masvidal in his wildest dreams, says Fight Life Nation. You never know, bro. You never know. Mihailo Mikhail says, and Dustin had Habib in a very dangerous headlock. He's a legit black belt in BJJ for sure. You're right about that. Austin Allen says, I agree. Conor gets stomped out. You never know. You never know, man. He's so quick and sneaky with that left hand, man. It's if it lands, I think he can knock anybody out with that thing if it lands. Even Masvidal, Of course, Masvidal is a very tough guy. But that's a tough fight. The UFC knows if they match Conor against Masvidal, they will lose a bit of steam on the Habib fight. I agree with that. I think that's why it probably won't be made. If you're watching on the replay, like, subscribe, comment, share this. Comment. Tell me who you think would win this fight. I'd love your opinion. Knuckleheads, thank you for joining me on the Keep It Clean podcast. That's all I have for you guys tonight. We will be back tomorrow. I think we're going to be talking about Mike Tyson tomorrow. We'll switch over to boxing a little bit. We'll talk about Mike Tyson coming back, who he might be fighting in his comeback fight. I think that's something interesting we could talk about. And then Friday, I think we'll have Chris Cross on the show, one of Marlon Vera's teammates. He's also a broadcaster for Fighters Rep. He's one of our broadcasters and happens, again, to be Marlon Cheeto Vera's teammate. So we'll get his thoughts on that fight and, see what else is going on in the fight world on Friday. But anyway, Knuckleheads, appreciate you guys joining me. Love having you guys on here as usual. Hit the subscribe, donate to the channel, get you a shirt. Please get you a shirt. I'm really trying to get this gear out there so you guys can show some love for the promotion for the channel. And until next time, Knuckleheads, keep it clean. I'm the Fighters Rep. I'm out of here.